Welcome to Everyday Economics, a podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, president of the 501c3 nonprofit Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can check out all of our great podcasts at americastalking.com. To support podcasts such as this one, please make your tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording this episode on Friday, November 4th. And joining me, as per normal, is Dr. Orphe Divounguy. He's a PhD economist. Dr. O, let's just get right into it. We have a lot of new data that's been made available to us. The JOLTS report came out. The jobs report is out. Let me set the stage for you, and you can walk us through it. The JOLTS report shows that there are 10.72 million jobs available in the United States. The job report from the Department of Labor, federal, says 261,000 more people are working this month than they were the month before. What does it mean? Where are we headed with this, my friend?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because the number of job openings actually increased in September by 437,000. That's just crazy, right? So you have more job openings. And so you have more jobs available today than you have workers, which means basically you have a very, very hot labor market still. And then today's jobs report shows an increase of 261,000 jobs. So the labor market is still very hot. But the good news, there's a little bit of good news, is that it's cooling somewhat. Because, right, over the past 3 months, we saw nearly 300,000 more people finding work, moving into employment each month. So now we saw 261 last month. Wage growth decreased over the past month as well. So even though wage growth is up 4.7%, the pace has actually eased. And this is not to undermine the pain felt by many families, right? Because we understand wages are not keeping up with the pace of inflation. And so we have less spending power overall.
You'd reference inflation. So inflation's at 8.2%. It's down, but only microscopically. Is it 8.26% the month before? For those people who are joining into the workforce, are they getting better jobs? I mean, are they getting jobs that are perhaps better than the job that they had before if they're re-entering the workforce? If the numbers are reflecting those people changing jobs, what can you make of the data that's available?
I think what we're learning is that hiring has slowed, right? That people have jobs, but hiring has slowed. The sectors are still really hot are accommodation and food services, healthcare, and social assistance. These are industries still hiring at a very rapid pace, and they're still creating a ton of new vacancies. I guess the big question on my mind is, should today's jobs report be seen as good news or bad? Right? On one hand, today's report is good news on the battlefront against inflation. And here's what I mean by that. Even though the labor market is still very hot, it's cooling, and wage growth is also easing. When you look at the housing market, it tells you the same story. The housing market is cooling very rapidly. Our Zillow Observed Rent Index, which leads rent in CPI, is also cooling. Right? So the combination of moderating wage and rent growth is good news for the Fed. And I think good news for the Fed is good news for the rest of us, because it perhaps means that we're not going to continue to see those rapid rate increases that we've seen in 2022. So that's the good news. The bad news is cooling inflation comes on the heel of cooling consumer spending and a cooling labor market. Right? The consumers are perhaps not feeling too good about the future. Weakening consumer spending does not bode well for the economy in 2023. So this is kind of where we are right now. We want to see inflation come down, but the risk of a recession has also increased.
Yeah, I got a question inside of the data. From the JOLTS report, which looks at the jobs and the opportunities for employment. The number that they're showing is 10.72 million. Is it possible that is not real, that that's an artificial number? I mean, that there is just not the kind of validation there that would allow us to believe that there's that much employment opportunity right now?
So first of all, that number is for September, right? So the U.S. jobs report that came out today was for October.
Right.
So JOLTS kind of releases the BLS releases the job openings and labor turnover summary 2 months back, I guess. And so we're looking at September numbers. That's the first thing. The second thing is that same report shows hiring has fallen.
Yes. While there may be openings, they're not necessarily bringing people onto payrolls. I mean, that's the number that we record with the jobs report. And these two numbers, they move along at different pacing. Yes.
That's right. Hiring has fallen. And weakening consumer spending going into 2023 means businesses are likely going to hit the brakes even further on hiring, right? Because if demand slows, labor demand is also likely to slow.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the fact that there's so little talent available that we're still facing these huge shortages could mean that businesses might actually just try to hold on to their current workforce. Now, we may not see a lot of layoffs like we would traditionally see in a economic downturn. All of these factors are kind of positive for the soft landing, the case of a soft landing, if you still want to call it that, right? The idea that if we go into a mild recession, that we don't have a massive crash, then it's a win for the Fed. It's a win for everybody. So that's kind of the thesis, right? At least what I'm seeing out there with those numbers.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate the thoughts. Thanks again, Orphe. For Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.